brought to you by LaglessGG. Get 35% off your first purchase by using code CygnusMC or click the link below. In the world of modded Minecraft, there are a few words that spark as much debate as the words paid mods. Everybody hates them, but simultaneously everybody believes that a mod dev should get compensated for the hours of work they put into their creations. So what about a middle ground? A middle ground like today's subject Axiom, where you have a free to use, fully complete version for single players and non-commercial use, while having a paid for license for commercial use, aka build teams and big servers. Does this finally strike a balance between the two extremes? Well, no. It seems that this has become yet another lightning rod for the endless pits of debate that is my comment section. As on the 10th of May, a person from a non-commercial project published this article accusing them of breaking the EULA and improperly asking for too much information that Axiom simply didn't need. But the question is this true? Is Axiom, and by extension its developer Mulberry, just an underhanded monopoly man that just wishes to steal your data? Well, actually not quite. As you will see throughout this video, some of the claims vary from agreeable to debatable to downright moronic. Welcome to the absolute mess that is the Axiom debacle. For those who don't know, Axiom is a very powerful tool allowing you to build with extreme precision, allowing for third-person edits to be performed as if it was a tool like Photoshop or GIMP for my Linux bros. Created by Mulberry in 2023, it now serves as a staple in the very active building for money scene, with numerous commercial build teams proudly using it as a part of their tool suite, usually only going in for detailing or smaller corrections afterwards, but using Axiom for the larger creation. Before Axiom came along, you just had Worldedit, as many of you might know, which used by using a tool in the world itself and typing a command in order to perform actions. Axiom streamlines this by giving you an actual interface, tools, and a camera that makes it look like you're working in a game engine rather than Minecraft itself. Pretty cool, right? So what's the issue here? Well, it comes down to two main factors. It being closed source and it having a paid for version, which both at the same time are the bane of modded Minecraft's existence. So you can't just download Axiom for free, build a map in single player, and get all the tools you wanted or were advertised on the page, and then use that map in a server by porting the world file over to a host of your choosing. In my case, that would be Lagless, but any good host allows you to just upload your single player world file to them. However, if you want to work with multiple people on one project by using a multiplayer building server, you need what is known as a commercial license, either paying $8 a month per player or get a server-wide whitelist for only 25 euros a month. And if you don't want to pay for this whitelist, your server will be given 30 days for free, after which you will actually need to buy a whitelist to use it commercially. And this is the wall our humble little server we will call Steve MC. This server is a non-profit, non-commercial server. In other words, it's an above average popular Minecraft server run for a great community project. However, its builders were used to using Axiom. But for a server that is already bleeding money every month and is not accepting donations, it would seem kind of foolish for them to pay $25 extra per month just to have a fancy world editing tool. Luckily though, I neglected to mention here that there is another way of getting Axiom for free on your server, and that is the non-commercial whitelist. See, the Axiom non-commercial whitelist gives you access to all the same powerful tools on single player for no additional costs. All you need to do is provide your UUID, the server that is using the tool, its IP, details of what you use Axiom for, and an explanation why your usage would classify as non-commercial. And this is where the issue started. Steve MC, server owner, had 20 people building on their server. Would this mean that all 20 people would need to apply with their UUIDs, the IPs, and the reasoning why they would use Axiom to apply for a whitelist? Not only that, but just why would you need to divulge your UUID? As they described it in their blog post, this information, according to them, is personal. So why would he need this? This eventually escalated in an altercation where the owner ended up calling Mulberry, the creator of Axiom, a quote, sack of shit, something they are self-admittedly not so proud over and wish to apologize for. After this altercation, the server owner then went to numerous publications, including my recently collabed with colleague, Keisai Sora. And I'm not gonna throw shade at him here. He was just reporting on information that was given to him, but I am sadly going to have to say that this blog post and this video isn't the full picture. So why don't we look at the full picture? Let's take a look at the 3 main claims being made against Mulberry in this blog post. The process of whitelisting for an entire server is time-consuming and potentially frustrating for individuals who need to undergo this process. The personal information requested is being unnecessary, and the fact that a project so clearly non-commercial like Steve MC shouldn't even need to explain their non-commercial commitment every time they reapply. These 3 claims, when viewed into the single lens that the server owner has painted so far in my Discord and others, kinda look pretty damning for Axiom, but it's all shatters apart when we broaden the scope even lightly. Steve MC, the server owner, was already given a no renewal necessary license for a different project on a different IP. The owner just forgot that they were offered this, since it has been a long time ago and had been on an account that was nuked before. Not to mention, this was also for a different project entirely. See, how this works is, if your server is reputable enough and not just random ass little Timmy server and has any modicum of credibility in the Minecraft community, Mulberry will just give you a perpetual non-commercial whitelist for everyone on the server, meaning you will never have to interact with his Discord again unless you change your IP, which rarely happens unless you're moving hosts all the time. But their main concern was why Mulberry needed this much information and how that information was handled, which leads us to our second point: the requirements in order to get whitelisted in the first place. All these questions here that I'm going to list has a function. You need to provide your UUIP, the IP, why you're using it, and how you're using it. These all have a function. The UUID and IP is used to know who is actually giving the whitelist to. The last remaining questions are not so Mulberry knows exactly what you're doing with their software and they can monitor you. It's to make sure that building teams who often collaborate on servers use Axiom for commercial purposes, with maps created with these teams going anywhere between 15 to 90 euros at the high end, and can even be charging more for custom builds, are actually paying for a commercial license. But let's ask ourselves, why is the UUID needed for Axiom to function? See, for those who don't know, when you buy Minecraft, you are assigned a UUID, or Universally Unique Identifier, which is linked to your current username and your account. This is a 128-bit string of numbers and letters that cannot be altered by any means. This UUID is primarily used by servers to store your data. Let's say you had the name and the very cool name of subscribe to Cygnus MC. You join the server and find the diamond. That diamond is then stored in the server's world folder, more specifically in your inventory file in a folder named after your UUID. The next time you join the server will read your UUID, load the inventory file from your UUID folder, and then you have the diamond again. Even if you change your name and somebody else takes the name you had previously and you both join the same server, the UUID remains the same, and thus you won't suddenly lose that diamond because someone sniped the name off you. But okay, under GDPR regulations, the UUID would classify as a piece of, quote, personal data because its information relates to an identifiable, naturable person who can be identified by reference of an identifier, because at its core, the UUID is an identifier. That's the whole purpose of the thing. But it's not personally identifiable information. It can't be used to identify you as a person in real life. I can't use the UUID on its own to find your real name, address, and what kind of degenerate stuff you watch on the internet. More importantly, how is Axiom actually support to whitelist you if you don't give them the UUID? Like just on names, then we have the same issue again. After talking to the server owner about their claims, they tried to clarify that their issues more so stem from the fact that they are using Discord in order to whitelist people, and that isn't a great way to go about it privacy-wise. Furthermore, the process of getting a permanent whitelist was not very well advertised at the time. And how does Mulberry actually handle this data? These were all concerns by the Steve MC devs. Well, according to Mulberry itself, when we go to their privacy policy page, as mentioned, you can buy a license on the website. You can either buy a personal license and you'll have to fill in only your UUID, or buy a server-wide license and enter your IP of the server. Not both. This information only gets stored for 30 days on the website itself, as it uses Nginx and their logs get purged every 30 days automatically or whenever the website needs to reboot. However, for the perpetual whitelist, you need to contact Mulberry on his Discord, which will require all the things I listed before and the 2 extra requirements of explaining why your server is supposed to be non-commercial and what you're using the software for. This happens in Discord, as mentioned, and is not the safest method of doing this sort of a thing. So I think a better way should be made to resolve this kind of an issue going into the future. But before this debacle, it wasn't entirely clear that this license even existed. And thanks to their talks, this is now proudly displayed on their modern page. But let's address the elephant in the room, the fact that it's a paid mod, and therefore is breaking Minecraft EULA. The elephant is named Steve, by the way. Now, to say that something breaks the EULA nowadays is kinda saying like you saw Santa. Yes, I know he exists, but I don't think the elves care if you've seen them or not. However, the EULA clearly states that you are not allowed to make money from any of their products and have a specific clause about mods not being able to make money. This would include paid for mods like Axiom. In fact, there is a recent example in 2023 when the creator of the physics mods was required to change their pro version into a free one as per Mojang's request. But my dear fellows, a EULA is a legal document that should be read in full. You can't just point at a random section and go, ha, see, I'm right. The EULA actually specifically mentions that mods can't make money. It also clarifies that you can't make money off their property. Now, in technical terms, you could argue that anything made for or on Minecraft isn't supposed to make any money, but that would mean servers or anything else you do with Minecraft cannot earn you any money. In reality, the statements just means that you can't just take the game, add a modification to it, and sell that off entirely. Making money from modifications is actually not that out loud as it might seem at first glance. Let's take another document that people often skip to read, the guidelines. We see that the word money or profit isn't even mentioned in the modifications section, only in the server section where it clearly outlines that everyone should have access to your server for the same price. And in my communications with the enforcement team over at Mojang, they clearly stated that they do not have an issue with creators getting financial compensation as long as everybody can gain access to the same server without having to pay up. Let's put all that into an example. If you had a server and you charge everyone $5 to get in, just to cover server costs, Mojang wouldn't care, because the cost of entry is the same for everyone. But if you added a paid mod to that server that requires people to go out and buy that mod, that would not be allowed. Axiom can just be added to the server and the client wouldn't even notice if their permissions are set up correctly. So paid mods are technically EULA compliant as long as they don't interfere with server operations where somebody can't join because they haven't had the paid mod. And I can hear you already typing in the comments. Oh my god, Lunar, I can't believe you are defending a paid mod. First you praised everything being open source and now you're glazing a paid mod? What's wrong with you? But before you click that unsubscribe button with the same vigor that you pulled down Hang in Star Rail this morning, I know that it's a little bit weird, and I will always advocate for open source or at least source available software. However, Mulberry's choice of going closed source and paid has resulted in him doing what he loves most as a job, with great results as well, with some accounts I've talked to vouching for him being a phenomenal programmer, and he even whipped up a fix in under 50 minutes for one person having one issue. It's only because Mulberry works on it full time that Axiom is as great as it is. And in this community, we've already had 2 creators with some of the biggest mods in Minecraft history go homeless for a time. Yet the second someone asks for a bit of money, everybody goes into a hoopla about it. But Lunar, they can just ask for donations. That's a better way, right? And sure they can. Look at Luck Perms, the permissions plugin almost used in every server out there. Thousands of servers use Luck Perms. Wanna guess how many patrons they got? Go ahead, just get a guess. I'll give you an A to B. A, 1,000. B, 2,000. C, 3,000. Let's have a guess. I'll give you 5 seconds to do it. No, I'm not gonna give you 5 seconds. It's 65. That's the amount of patrons that spent money on the free plugin that literally makes their whole server function. It's okay to not like paid mods, but it's also okay to be compensated for your work, especially when you spend this much time into it. But with that all being said, let's get back on track. In the aftermath of all of this, Mulberry extended its free version to be renewed every 90 days or 180 days for server boosters and patrons. This was done after the server owner and Mulberry had a lengthy and at times heated discussion. The server owners also apologized for their behavior. Keep in mind that it was not the server's intention to just get a free license for nothing. Their stance was that it was hard to get this license and in some cases very confusing, as well as not being clearly advertised on the mod page. This didn't stop this information from being reported on without taking into account the full picture I just provided. So this was all for nothing then, was it? Well, no, I think this is a good lesson for not just taking information for granted. In this case, it's just two parties whose views were radically different that sparked an incident. An incident that brought positive changes to be sure, but in my mind could have been resolved in private and has caused multiple people to misinterpret the EULA once again. I do hope Kian's lawsuit goes through though, as they really need to make their EULA fucking readable. And some of the claims they made on their blog posts are just not very true. But regardless, I don't think the server owner here had any harmful intentions. And they have claimed that the UUID is actually private information in some conversations. But this is also sparked by them being harassed due to Crafty GG's habit of keeping a record of previous names, while the assailant used that information to track the server owner down. But maybe that's something for another day. For now, I was Lunar, you were very awesome. And man, this video was very stressful. Alright, thank you very much for watching this video. Two things before I say thank you to my patrons and my YouTube members. Please do not harass anyone in this video. They are already in talks. They already talked it out. Nobody's gonna get mad. Just don't do it. And two, thank you to both the Steve MC, server owner, and Mulberry to talking to me and getting to some sort of a good conclusion. I'm not here to fester wounds. I'm here to report accurately and make sure that people don't get the wrong idea from other people. This is how misconceptions start, and this is how very, very deep-rooted hate towards a certain tool can get started. But for just $1 a month, you get access to all my videos on early access, and on Patreon, you have access to a full library of 25 full-length interviews ranging from people from like young Nick Young to people who developed X4, all that and so much more for only $1 a month. Please do think about supporting my work if you like this journalistic kind of intent. And with that, I'm gonna go away because it's like looking at 21 minutes for this episode, so holy shit. Anyway, if you are at MCM, please come see me. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.